Mother-in-law and husband left me alone at the airport, not knowing that I was the one who had fully paid for our seaside trip. At that moment, I calmly made one phone call. I never thought my life would turn into a thriller. That kind of thing only happens in movies or books, but certainly not in real life. However, fate sometimes throws such surprises that all you can do is marvel at its ingenuity. My story began quite ordinarily. I am Natalia Igorevna Voronova, 32 years old, working as an accountant in a large company. I lived in a standard 2-room apartment on the outskirts of the city and considered myself a fairly happy person. At least, that's what I thought until that very day at the airport. I met Andrei, my husband, 5 years ago at a company party. He worked in the marketing department and always stood out among other employees with his energy and charm. Tall, fit, with expressive brown eyes and a sincere smile. What can I say? I fell in love at first sight. He came up to me while I was standing at the buffet table looking at the canapés. "Try these with salmon, they're simply divine," he said, handing me a plate. His voice was deep, with a slight huskiness that sent shivers down my spine. That's how our acquaintance began, and it quickly turned into a romance. Andrei courted me beautifully. Flowers, restaurants, moonlit walks, just like in the best romantic films. 6 months later he proposed, and of course I said yes. We had a modest wedding for our closest loved ones and began building our little family nest. The first 2 years of marriage were a real fairy tale. We understood each other without words, solved everyday issues together, and planned our future. Andrei was a caring and attentive husband. I tried to create warmth and comfort in our home. We both worked, saved money for our own place, and dreamed of having children. It seemed nothing could cloud our happiness. But then my mother-in-law, Elena Mikhailovna, actively interfered in our lives. Before that, we didn't see her often. She lived in another city, called her son once a week, and occasionally visited for a couple of days. Our relationship was distant but polite. I tried to please her, cooked something nice, kept the conversation going. She remained aloof, but not openly hostile. Everything changed when her sister's husband suddenly died of a heart attack. Elena Mikhailovna was left completely alone in her city and decided to move in with us. "It's just temporary until I find myself an apartment nearby," she assured. Andrei, of course, couldn't refuse his mother and fully supported her decision. No one asked me. So, in our small 2-room apartment, a third person appeared. Elena Mikhailovna took over the living room, turning it into her bedroom. From that point on, Andrei and I were almost never alone. My mother-in-law was everywhere. She cooked in our kitchen, watched her TV shows on our television, and constantly commented on our life, our habits, and our relationship. "Andriusha, you need more protein. You've lost so much weight lately. Natasha isn't taking care of your nutrition at all," she would say at dinner, serving him another helping of meat she had prepared, even though I had spent the entire day cooking his favorite dish. "It's fine, Mom. I'm on a diet," Andrei would reply, yet still obediently ate what she gave him. Elena Mikhailovna was a master at subtly manipulating her son. She never criticized me directly, always started with a compliment, followed by a "but." "Natashenka, you're so smart, so beautiful. But you really don't know how to iron. Look at the creases on Andrei's trousers. Let me show you how to do it right." It was the same with everything. My cooking, my way of dressing, how I folded the laundry, even my profession. Everything was subject to her constant, subtle criticism. I tried to ignore it, told myself she just cared about her son and wanted the best for him. But with each passing day, it became harder. To my surprise, Andrei didn't notice any of this. To him, his mother was a saint, the embodiment of wisdom and kindness. "Mom just wants to help. he'd say whenever I tried to explain how difficult it was to constantly be under her scrutiny. She's lonely. She needs our attention and care. I understood him, truly I did. He was a good son, attentive and caring. But I also saw how our relationship was slowly changing. We talked heart to heart less often, argued more over trivial things. Andre spent more and more time with his mother. They'd sit in the kitchen for hours, reminiscing about his childhood, discussing mutual acquaintances, planning the future. I was left out of those conversations. Just temporary, stretched into a year and a half. During that time, Elena Mikhailovna made no attempt to find her own place, but she completely took over our apartment, rearranged the furniture, changed the curtains, and even threw out my favorite figurines that I had collected since childhood. "They collect dust, dear," she explained. Andre just shrugged. "Mom's right, they were dusty." I felt like a guest in my own home. My opinion no longer mattered. If I suggested a weekend getaway, Elena Mikhailovna would suddenly remember her back hurt, and the trip would be cancelled. If I made dinner, she always found a way to hint that the dish was too salty or undercooked. If I suggested inviting my parents, there was always a reason why it wasn't the right time. My relationship with Andre gradually cooled. We no longer spent evenings cuddled on the couch, no longer whispered to each other late into the night, sharing our most intimate thoughts. Now between us his mother was always there, physically or invisibly. Even when we were alone in the bedroom, I felt her presence in every word Andre said, in every gesture he made. "Mom thinks we should wait with having kids. Now's not the right time," he said one day when I brought up that it was time we started thinking about having a child. "And what do you want, Andre?" I asked, trying to catch his gaze. "I agree with Mom. She's a wise woman. She wouldn't give bad advice." That was a turning point. I realized I was losing my husband, that he was becoming more and more of a mama's boy and less of an independent man. But I didn't know what to do, how to change the situation. Direct conversations with Andre led nowhere. He would either brush off my concerns or accuse me of disrespecting his mother. "You just don't understand how important Mom is to me," he'd say with hurt in his voice. "She dedicated her whole life to me, gave up her personal happiness for my sake, and you can't put up with her for a few months?" A few months had long since turned into years, but I didn't remind him of that. It was pointless. On this topic, he was deaf to any argument. My only refuge became work. I buried myself in numbers, reports, and balance sheets, stayed late, took on extra projects, volunteered to help colleagues. At home, I tried to be there as little as possible, and when I was, I locked myself in the bedroom with a book or my laptop. Elena Mikhailovna gladly took over all the household responsibilities I used to manage: cooking, cleaning, laundry. Andre was happy. His two favorite women were living in peace and harmony, or so he thought. In reality, I was on the verge of a nervous breakdown. Depression crept in unnoticed, day by day, like silent water that erodes stone. I stopped taking care of myself, lost interest in things that used to bring me joy, became irritable and tearful. Andre didn't notice the changes in me, or didn't want to notice. He was perfectly content with the situation. He had a caring mother who created homey comfort and a wife who didn't interfere with their idol and brought in money for the family. Yes, by that time I had become the main breadwinner. Andre was laid off during company downsizing and hadn't been able to find a new job for 6 months. Or rather, he wasn't really trying. He'd browse job listings occasionally, go to the rare interview, but always found a reason why a particular job wasn't suitable. The salary was too low, the office too far, or he didn't like the team. Elena Mikhailovna wholeheartedly supported her son in this job search. "You deserve better, Andriusha. Don't sell yourself short." My salary was enough to cover rent, utilities, and modest groceries. Any extra expenses, let alone travel or big purchases, were out of the question. I couldn't even remember the last time I'd bought myself new clothes or gone to a beauty salon. Every penny went to a family in which I felt like a stranger. Salvation came unexpectedly in one fine day. I was summoned by the company director, Viktor Stepanovich, a serious man in his 50s, with whom I had hardly interacted before. "Natalia Igorevna, I've been observing your work for a while," he began, as I sat on the edge of a chair in his spacious office. "You're a responsible, attentive specialist, and importantly, you know how to find unconventional solutions in difficult situations." I nodded silently, not understanding where this was going. "I have a business proposal for you. Our company is opening a branch in Sochi. We need an experienced accountant to help set things up on site. A 3-month assignment, with the possibility of long-term employment there if you like it. The salary is 1.5 times your current one, plus a performance bonus. The company will pay for housing and airfare." I couldn't believe my ears. This was exactly what I needed. A chance to break out of the vicious cycle, breathe freely, think about my life far away from Elena Mikhailovna and her manipulations. "When do you need an answer?" I asked, trying not to reveal my excitement. "The sooner the better. The flight is planned for 2 weeks from now." "I need to talk to my husband," I replied, though my inner voice was already screaming, "Say yes. Say yes now." That evening, I told Andrei about the director's offer. His reaction was predictable. 3 months in Sochi without us. He looked at me as if I had suggested something indecent. "Natasha, are you out of your mind? How do you imagine this? I'm supposed to live without my wife for 3 months. Andrei, it's a great career opportunity. And the money is good. You know how much we need the money right now. We don't need money, we need family. What will people say if they find out you left your husband for 3 months? They'll think we're having problems." "But don't we have problems?" I asked quietly. He looked at me in surprise. "What are you talking about? Everything's fine. You're just tired, so you think the grass is greener somewhere else." The conversation hit a dead end. Andrei didn't want to hear my arguments. I couldn't break through his confidence in his own rightness. In the end, he just walked off to the kitchen, where his mother was waiting with a hot dinner and a sympathetic ear for any complaints about his ungrateful wife. I didn't sleep all night, turning the situation over in my head. On one hand, I didn't want to escalate the conflict with my husband. Despite everything, I still loved him and hoped we could save our relationship. On the other hand, this assignment was a chance to change everything, to escape the destructive circle I had fallen into. In the morning, I told Viktor Stepanovich that I accepted his offer. He was pleased, shook my hand, and said all the documents would be ready in the coming days. At home, I tried once more to explain to Andrei why this assignment was so important. For me, for us, for our future. He listened with a stony face, then simply said, "Do whatever you want, just don't expect me to be happy for you." Elena Mikhailovna, of course, immediately took her son's side. "Natashenka, I understand your desire to grow professionally, but family should always come first. Andriusha is so upset, he loves you, he worries. 3 months is such a long time. Why don't you both come with me?" I suggested, though I already knew the answer. "The company is covering the housing. It'll be a 2-room apartment. There will be enough space for everyone. You could rest, soak up some sun." "Oh, darling." Elena Mikhailovna shook her head. "I have high blood pressure, I don't handle climate change as well. And Andriusha needs to look for a job, not relax at a resort." Just as I thought. My mother-in-law didn't want to let her son go. Not even for a minute, not even for his own good. The next 2 weeks passed in tense silence. Andre barely spoke to me, spending all his free time with his mother. They whispered in the kitchen, falling silent whenever I walked in. I felt like a traitor even though I had done nothing wrong. I just wanted a bit of freedom, a little space for myself. The day before my flight, as I was packing my suitcase, Andre walked into the room. He looked determined, even a little combative. "Natalia, I've thought it over," he said, sitting on the edge of the bed. "Mom and I decided we're going with you." I couldn't believe my ears. Seriously? But what about Elena Mikhailovna's blood pressure? And the job search? Mom agreed that the sea would be good for her health, and I can look for work remotely. Lots of companies do Skype interviews these days. I was stunned by this sudden decision, but at the same time I was hopeful. Maybe this trip really would help us rebuild our relationship. Maybe, away from the familiar environment and in a new place, Andre would remember why he fell in love with me, not his mother. "That's wonderful," I said, trying to hide my mixed emotions. "But there's one problem, the company is only paying for my flight. You'll have to buy your own tickets." "Don't worry about that," Andre waved his hand. "I'll take care of it." I didn't ask where my unemployed husband suddenly found money for 2 plane tickets. Maybe he borrowed from friends, or maybe he decided to spend whatever savings he had quietly put away. At that moment I didn't care. I was just glad I wouldn't have to part with my husband for 3 months, that we had a chance to fix everything. The next day was chaotic. I was tying up loose ends at work, while Andre and Elena Mikhailovna were packing their things. We agreed to meet at the airport 2 hours before the flight. I had to stop by the office to pick up documents, and they were going directly from home. When I arrived at the airport, they still hadn't shown up. I wasn't worried. There was still an hour and a half left before check-in. Plenty of time. I got in line, occasionally glancing at the entrance, expecting to see the familiar figures of my husband and mother-in-law. Time passed, but they didn't appear. I started to feel nervous. Called Andre, his phone was off. I dialed Elena Mikhailovna's number. The same. Strange. They were usually always reachable. Until the end. There were 20 minutes left before check-in closed when my phone finally rang. It was Andre's number. "Where are you?" "I'm waiting for you. Check-in is about to close," I blurted out as soon as I answered. "Natasha, we're not coming." Andre's voice sounded strange. There was no usual warmth or even irritation, just cold detachment. "Mom and I decided this trip is pointless. You need to work, and we have nothing to do in Sochi. Come back home and we'll talk it over." "What?" I couldn't believe my ears. "Andre, you promised. I've been waiting for you. They've already announced boarding." "Sorry. This will be for the best. Mom thinks." I didn't listen to what his mother thought. Something inside me snapped, the last thread tying me to this man, to this family where I had always been the third wheel, the outsider. "Tell your mother she won," I said quietly. And so did I. And I hung up. A strange calm took over me, as if I'd been fighting against a strong current for too long, and now had decided to just let go, let it carry me away. No more struggling. No more trying to prove I was worthy of love and respect. I checked in, dropped off my luggage, passed through passport control, all in a haze. Mechanical actions, polite smiles to staff, standard phrases. But inside there was only emptiness. No pain. No anger. No sorrow. Just emptiness. Sitting in the departure lounge, I reflected on my life. How I had ended up in this situation. How I had allowed my mother-in-law to push me out of my own family. How I failed to reach my husband. How I had lost myself in endless attempts to please, to meet expectations, to be a good wife. The final boarding call shook me from my thoughts. I got up, grabbed my carry-on, and headed toward the gate. At that moment, the phone rang again. I didn't answer. I simply silenced it. Whatever he wanted to say no longer mattered. Settling into my seat on the plane, I felt a lightness I hadn't felt in a long time, as if the heavy weight I'd been carrying on my shoulders had suddenly vanished. Ahead of me lay the unknown. See you Monday. He smiled and waited until I entered the building. As I rode the elevator up, I thought about my strange state. Why had Igor's attention affected me so deeply? I was married after all, even if it was complicated. And he was my boss, which made any kind of personal relationship highly undesirable. As soon as I entered the apartment, I rushed to the mirror. I hadn't really looked at myself in a long time. Dark circles under my eyes. Pale skin. Dull hair pulled back carelessly. Simple, practical, bland clothes. When had I stopped taking care of myself? When had I become this tired, faded woman? This won't do, I said to my reflection. You deserve better. The next day, Saturday, I devoted to myself. I found the nearest beauty salon and got a haircut, manicure, and pedicure. Then I went shopping, bought several summer dresses, skirts, blouses, and sandals. Everything was bright, light, completely unlike my usual wardrobe made up mostly of dark, practical clothes. In the evening, after a long day of shopping, I sat on the balcony, sipping cold lemonade and watching the sunset. The phone, which I only turned on for work calls, suddenly rang. It was Andre's number. I hesitated, should I answer? But curiosity got the better of me. Hello, I said in a neutral tone. Natasha, finally. Andre's voice sounded anxious. I didn't know what to think anymore. You're not answering calls, not reading messages. I was worried. Really? I couldn't hide the irony. It seemed to me you and your mother decided it would be better if I flew alone. So I doubt my well-being worried you much. Natalia, don't start. His voice now held familiar notes of irritation. We explained. Mom wasn't feeling well, her blood pressure spiked. The doctor forbade flying. Interesting. And when exactly did you see a doctor? Between my leaving for work and your non-appearance at the airport. I was surprised at my own calm. In the past, conversations like this made me nervous, defensive. Now I felt strong, confident. You misunderstood everything. Andre switched to his favorite tactic, shifting the blame to me. Mom's been under a doctor's care for a while. You just didn't want to notice. You've become distant, cold. You only think about work and your career lately. I remained silent, letting him speak. Before, I would have defended myself, explained that I worked hard for our family, that his unemployment forced me to become the sole provider. But now I just listened, realizing that every word he said was another nail in the coffin of our marriage. Are you even listening to me? He asked when the silence dragged on. Yes, Andre, I'm listening. And you know what? I'm tired. Tired of being the bad wife who doesn't understand, doesn't appreciate, doesn't respect. Tired of being the third wheel in my own family. Tired of your constant blame and manipulation. What are you talking about? His voice rose in outrage. What manipulation? I've always been honest with you. Really? Smirk. And what about your decision to go with me to Sochi? You never intended to, did you? It was just a way to make me feel guilty when I realized you didn't show up. We were going to come, he protested. But Mom felt sick and... Andre, enough, I cut him off. I don't believe a single word you say anymore. And you know what? I don't care. Live with your mother. Be happy together. Just leave me alone. You're leaving me. Now his voice held genuine surprise. Over one failed trip. Natasha, are you out of your mind? No, Andre. I've finally come to my senses. For the first time in years, I see things clearly. Our marriage has long become a farce. You live with your mother and I just pay your bills. This isn't a family. It's a financial support service. So that's what it's about. His voice turned icy. Money. You think I'm only with you because of your salary? Isn't that the truth? When was the last time you brought money into the family? When was the last time you cared about my feelings, my desires? When did you take my side in arguments with your mother? Mom just cares about us, he shouted now. She only wants the best for us. For you, Andre. Only for you. Not for us. And you know what? I don't even blame her. She's a mother. She loves her son and wants him to be happy. I blame you for letting her come between us. For not being a man. For not being the head of the family. How dare you? He was furious. Everything I've done for you. And what exactly have you done, Andre? Yes. I'm all ears. He fell silent. Perhaps in that moment, he realized that he truly couldn't name a single meaningful contribution he'd made to our relationship over the past few years. You know what? He finally said. His voice suddenly calmer, more calculated. Let's do this. You calm down, get some rest, focus on your work, and in 3 months you'll come back home. Then we'll talk things through, like adults. No, Andre. I'm not coming back. At least, not to you. What are you saying? His indignation flared again. What about the apartment? Your stuff. You're just going to leave it all. The apartment's rented. And nothing important hinges on a few belongings. If I need anything, you can mail it. Natalia, you can't just throw away 5 years of marriage like that. I can, Andre. And you know what's most surprising? It turned out to be a lot easier than I thought. I turned off my phone before he could answer. A strange feeling washed over me. A mix of sadness and relief. Like taking off a heavy backpack after a long and grueling hike. Your shoulders ache from the tension, but you know it's going to get easier from here. The next morning I bought a new SIM card and sent the number only to Irina and a few colleagues from the Moscow office. Andre could no longer reach me with his calls and messages. I was free. The following weeks flew by. Work took up most of my time, but I made room for rest as well. I went to the beach, swam in the sea, tanned in the sun. I got to know my neighbors. A young couple with a child living in the apartment across the hall. In the evenings, I sometimes ventured into town, strolled along the promenade, sat in cafes with a book, enjoying the warm summer nights. Igor often invited me to company events, and sometimes just to dinner after work. We talked about work, life, books, films. He was an engaging conversationalist with a sharp sense of humor and broad horizons. I caught myself looking forward to those meetings, preparing for them more carefully than usual, picking out an outfit, fixing my hair. But I kept my distance. After all, officially I was still married. Starting something new without closing the door on the old felt wrong. Igor seemed to understand my hesitation. He didn't rush anything, although I could see in his eyes that his interest in me went beyond mere collegiality. One Friday, after an especially stressful week, Igor suggested a weekend trip to the mountains. Just a short excursion, he said. I'll show you the beauty of Krasnaya Polyana. A change of scenery will clear our heads, get us away from numbers and reports. I wanted to decline. A weekend trip together, it felt too much like a date. But he anticipated my objections. Don't worry, it's not what you think. It's a company trip. A few other employees are coming with their families. I just thought you might be interested. That changed things. With other colleagues going, the trip didn't feel like something personal or intimate. Agreed. Krasnaya Polyana turned out to be a magical place. Majestic mountains, crisp air, views that took your breath away. We rode the cable car, hiked eco-trails, had lunch at a charming traditional restaurant. In the evening, tired but happy, we settled into a cozy hotel. After dinner, everyone went off to their rooms. I stepped out onto the balcony of mine, gazing at the starry sky, so bright and close in the mountains. Suddenly there was a knock at the door. "I hope I'm not bothering you," Igor said from the doorway. "I just wanted to make sure everything's okay. That the room is comfortable." "Everything's perfect," I smiled. "Thank you for your concern. Would you like to take a walk? It's such a warm night, and there's a beautiful gazebo in the hotel garden with a view of the mountains." I hesitated. On one hand, a late-night walk alone together no longer felt like just a friendly or professional gesture. On the other, I really did want to take a stroll, breathe the mountain air and look at the stars. "All right," I agreed. "Let me just grab a cardigan." We walked along a path dimly lit by garden lanterns. Around us, there was only the sound of cicadas and the rustling of leaves. Igor kept his distance. He didn't try to take my hand or put his arm around me, and I was grateful for that. The gazebo turned out to be a charming spot, wooden, entwined with ivy, with cozy benches and a small table. The view was stunning. A moonlit sky, mountain silhouettes, the twinkling lights of a distant village in the valley. "Do you like it?" Igor asked once we were settled on a bench. "Very much," I replied, unable to take my eyes off the panorama. "I've never seen anything like this. I often come here when I need to think, make an important decision. There's something about these mountains that helps you see things clearly, understand what really matters." We sat and talked about all sorts of things. Work, life in Sochi, how proximity to the sea and mountains changes a person. Gradually, the conversation shifted to more personal topics. "Natasha, can I ask you a personal question?" Igor turned to me. "What happened in your marriage? Why are you here alone and not with your husband?" I sighed. Sooner or later, this conversation had to happen. "It's a long story," I said, "and not a very cheerful one." "We've got the whole night," he smiled. "And I'm a good listener." So I told him everything. How my love with Andrei began, how his mother's interference gradually destroyed our marriage, how I lost myself trying to preserve the family, and how they abandoned me at the airport. Igor listened attentively, not interrupting, just occasionally asking clarifying questions. When I finished, he was silent for a long moment, processing what he'd heard. "You know what strikes me most about your story," he finally said. "Not that your husband turned out to be such a weak, dependent man. That's, unfortunately, a common problem. But that you, such a bright, intelligent, self-sufficient woman, tolerated it for so long. That you allowed them to manipulate you, to destroy your sense of self." "I loved him," I answered simply. "And I believed that love could overcome everything." "That's not naive," he said. "That's beautiful. You gave your all to a relationship that mattered to you. That speaks to your capacity to love, to your loyalty and devotion, qualities that are becoming increasingly rare in our cynical world." And what do I do now? I didn't even know why I was asking this question to a man I'd known for only a couple of weeks. "Live," he shrugged, as if the answer were obvious. "Live for yourself. Find what brings you joy and follow it. Be open to new opportunities. And new relationships." At those last words, his voice trembled slightly, and I realized he didn't mean abstract new relationships. He meant something real, something personal. "Igor," I decided to be honest. "Like you. Truly. I like you, but right now I'm in a very complicated place. Technically, I'm still married. Emotionally, I'm just beginning to recover from everything that happened. I'm not ready for a new relationship. I don't want to use you as a distraction, as a way to forget the past. I understand, he smiled, and in his smile there was no offense or disappointment. And I appreciate your honesty. Don't worry, I'm not rushing anything. I just want you to know, when you're ready, I'll be here. We sat in the gazebo for a long time, looking at the stars, talking about everything and nothing. It was one of the calmest, most peaceful evenings of my life. I felt like I'd found a friend, a person who understood me, accepted me as I was, without trying to change or use me. In the morning, we returned to Sochi. The trip to the mountains changed something in me. It was as if I saw my situation from above, from a distance, and understood what I needed to do next. On Monday, I called Irina and asked her for a favor. I need you to go to our apartment and collect a few things. Important documents, some memorable photos, a few personal items. I'll send you a list. Andrei, he'll object. Do you have the keys? Choose a time when he's not home. If you run into Yelena Mikhailovna, tell her I asked you to pick up items I need for work. Irina agreed, though a bit hesitantly. I made a detailed list and sent it to her, including only what was truly important to me. Everything else could stay. I wasn't claiming any joint property. A week later, Irina reported. Mission accomplished. She'd gathered everything and sent it in a package. Andrei wasn't home, but his mother was. She didn't interfere, in fact, she helped pack. She said, "You're a smart girl. Finally realized your place." I wasn't surprised. Yelena Mikhailovna was probably pleased I'd disappeared from their lives. Now she had full control over her son. His time, his future. Package arrived 5 days later. I unpacked it with a mix of anticipation and nerves. Documents, photos of my parents, a few books, jewelry my mother had given me, some beloved items. All neatly packed, undamaged. At the bottom of the box I found an envelope. Inside, a completed divorce application already signed by Andrei, and a short note. "You're right. Our marriage has long been a formality. Sign and send it to the court. Wishing you happiness. Andrei." I looked at the documents with mixed feelings. On one hand, I had wanted this divorce, had made the decision not to return to him. On the other, there was something painful in how easily he let me go, how quickly he agreed to the split. Did our 5 years together really mean nothing to him? But then I remembered the last year. His indifference, constant deference to his mother. His refusal to see how I was suffering. And I realized. He hadn't let me go now. He'd done it a long time ago when he allowed his mother to push me out of his life, when he chose her over me. I signed the papers, included all the required documents, and sent them to court. The divorce process would be a mere formality. We had no children, I wasn't claiming any assets, and Andrei wasn't making any demands. That same evening Irina called. "Natashka, you won't believe this. I just got a call from Svetka. You remember she works at your office? Well, your Andrei got a job at some construction company as a manager." "No way," I was surprised. He couldn't find the right job for months. Apparently, the absence of a breadwinner wife does wonders for motivation, Irina snorted. And get this, Svetka said she saw him at a restaurant with a woman. And it wasn't his mommy. A new victim. I couldn't help but smile. Strangely, I didn't feel jealous or hurt. Just a bit of pity for the unknown woman who, without realizing it, was entering a relationship not with a man, but with a boy and his mother. "Maybe just a colleague or a client," I said. "Let's not jump to conclusions." We talked for a long time about my new life, her updates, future plans. I told her about Igor. about how our relationship was still friendly but had the potential to become something more. Don't rush, Irina advised. Give yourself time to heal, to recover. Otherwise, you'll leap from one relationship to another and find yourself back in the same trap of other people's expectations and demands. I knew she was right. I needed time to figure myself out, to understand what I wanted from life, from relationships. Igor seemed to understand that too. He wasn't pushing, wasn't rushing anything. He was just there, caring, attentive, understanding. Our relationship developed slowly but naturally. We had lunch together, sometimes dinner after work. On weekends, we went on excursions or just walked along the promenade. We talked about everything: work, books, movies, our pasts, our dreams. I felt at ease with him, at peace. I didn't feel the need to pretend, to conform, to meet anyone's expectations. Time passed, and I became more and more accustomed to my new life. To a job that brought satisfaction, to colleagues who became friends, to a city that felt more like home each day, to a freedom I hadn't allowed myself for so long. A letter from the court came a month later. The divorce was finalized. I was officially no longer a married woman. It felt strange, like one chapter of life had closed and a new, blank page opened. One I could write however I wished. That evening, I called Igor and invited him to dinner. For the first time, the initiative came from me. He arrived with a bouquet of wildflowers, simple but beautiful in their naturalness. We sat on my balcony, ate dinner, talked, and looked out at the sea. I felt so calm next to him, so comfortable. No tension, no need to watch every word, no fear of judgment or criticism. I received the divorce papers today, I said as we finished our wine. I'm officially a free woman. Not exactly the occasion for congratulations, he smiled. But I'm glad that chapter is closed. What do you feel? Relief, little sadness, and a strange sense of freedom, like I'd been living in a cramped cage for years and now found myself in an open field. It's a bit scary, but also thrilling. And what are you going to do with your freedom? His voice was light, but I saw seriousness in his eyes. First, learn to live for myself. Figure out what I really like, what I want to, and then we'll see. That sounds like a great plan. He raised his glass. To your new life, Natasha. May it be exactly the way you want it to be. We clinked glasses, and suddenly I realized I was happy. Not the giddy, euphoric happiness I had felt at the beginning of my relationship with Andrei, but a calm, deep, confident happiness of someone who had finally found her path. Igor left late that night, not trying to stay over, although I could see the desire in his eyes. He respected my boundaries, my wish to move slowly and not rush anything, and I was grateful to him for that. The 3-month business trip was coming to an end. I had to decide what to do next. Return to Moscow, to the office where it had all begun, or stay here in Sochi, where for the first time in a long while I felt truly alive. Viktor Stepanovich called me a week before the assignment ended. "Natalia Igorevna, how's work going in Sochi?" he asked without preamble. "Excellent, Viktor Stepanovich. We've established the accounting system, organized the documentation, and created a financial plan for the year ahead. I'm aware. Igor Vladimirovich regularly reports on your work. He speaks very highly of you as a professional." "That's nice to hear," I said, feeling myself blush. I wondered if he really only praised me as a professional. "I have a proposal for you," the director continued. "You can stay in Sochi permanently. Position: financial director of the branch. Salary: twice what I was currently earning. Housing: paid for by the company for another 6 months while I get settled. What do you say?" I was stunned. Financial director at 32 with that salary, it was a dream offer. I don't know what to say," I stammered. It's very unexpected. Think it over, Viktor Stepanovich said with a smile in his voice. You have a week. But keep in mind, Igor Vladimirovich insisted on your candidacy. He said he couldn't find a better finance expert than you. After that call, I sat still for a long time, staring into space. Stay in Sochi forever. Start a new life here by the sea, in a city that had almost become home over the past 3 months. It was tempting, very tempting. But something held me back. Maybe fear of the unknown. Maybe habit. My old life in Moscow, familiar places, familiar people. Or maybe the worry that my relationship with Igor, still officially just a friendship, might become complicated if I stayed working under him. I decided to speak honestly with Igor. That evening, I invited him to dinner. Viktor Stepanovich called me, I said as we sat down. He offered me the position of financial director here in Sochi. And what did you say? Igor looked at me closely. Nothing yet. I asked for time to think. Igor, tell me honestly. Was it you who suggested me for the job? Viktor Stepanovich hinted that you insisted. Yes, he admitted. But don't think it had anything to do with our personal relationship. You're genuinely excellent at what you do. You've stabilized the branch, fixed the finances. I need someone like you on my team. And what about us? Ask directly. If I stay, how will it affect us? Not at all, he shrugged. At work, we're colleagues, professionals. In our personal lives, that's your call. I'm not pressuring you or demanding anything. I just want you to know my feelings for you are real. They don't depend on whether you stay or go. And if I turn it down, return to Moscow? I'll be very disappointed, he said. As a branch manager losing a valuable employee, and as a man who's just started to get to know an incredible woman. But I'll respect your choice. And maybe I'll start flying to Moscow more often for company business. Smiled. His answer was exactly what I had subconsciously hoped for. Honest, open, without manipulation or pressure. I need time to think, I said. This is a big decision that could change my whole life. Of course, he nodded. No rush. Weigh all the pros and cons. I'll support whatever you choose. I squeezed his hand gratefully. How different this was from my relationship with Andrei, where every decision that didn't align with his expectations led to storms of resentment and blame. I spent the next few days thinking. I called Irina, consulted with my parents, made lists of pros and cons. And the more I thought, the clearer it became. I wanted to stay in Sochi. I wanted this new role, new responsibility, new opportunities. I wanted to wake up and see the sea out my window, to walk along the promenade in the evenings, to breathe this incredible air. Half sea breeze, half mountain freshness. And I wanted to find out what could grow between me and Igor. Our relationship was still at the stage of friendship with a hint of flirtation, but I felt the potential for something deeper, more meaningful. On the day my decision deadline arrived, I called Viktor Stepanovich. I agree, Viktor Stepanovich. I'm staying in Sochi. Excellent. He didn't hide his satisfaction. Your appointment papers are ready. You start Monday. Don't disappoint me, Natalia Igorevna. I'll do my best, I promised. That evening I told Igor the news. He didn't hide his joy. This is the right decision, Natasha, for the company and for you. And maybe for us. For us, I smiled. Sounds serious. I am serious. He took my hand. Natasha, I know we've only known each other 3 months. I know you just went through a divorce. I know you need time. But I want you to know, I'm in love with you. I'm in love with your mind, your strength, your tenderness, your determination. And I'm willing to wait as long as it takes until you're ready for a new relationship. I looked into his eyes, so sincere, so full of feeling, and realized I was in love too. Not like with Andre, not that blind, all-consuming passion of youth, but a mature, conscious love. A love of a woman who knows what she wants and sees in the man across from her not just a romantic interest, but a partner, a friend, a kindred spirit. "I'm in love with you too, Igor." The words came out on their own. "And yes, I need time. But I want to see what can grow between us. I want to give us a chance." He smiled, and there was so much tenderness, so much happiness in that smile that my heart skipped a beat. He didn't kiss me. He didn't make any grand declarations or promises. He just squeezed my hand tighter and said, "Thank you for the chance. I'll do my best not to waste it." That's how my new life in Sochi began. With a new job, a new apartment that I found and rented on my own. Having declined further help from the company, new friends, and a new relationship. Igor turned out to be exactly as I had seen him. Attentive, caring, respectful of my boundaries and my independence. At work, we were professionals, colleagues, maintaining strictly business-like relations. Outside of work, we got to know each other gradually, letting one another into our lives, our thoughts, our hearts. I barely thought of my ex-husband. Occasionally Irina would share news from Moscow. "Andre is seeing some woman, seems like they're serious." Elena Mikhailovna isn't thrilled about his choice. Thinks the new girlfriend is too simple. "There's a new accountant at your old job, but he's not as good as you." Small details. Fragments of a life that no longer had anything to do with me. 6 months after my move to Sochi, Igor proposed to me. Not in a restaurant or against a sunset backdrop like in romantic films, but during a casual walk along the promenade while we were talking about work, company plans, and forecasts for the next quarter. "Natasha," he suddenly said, stopping. "Marry me." I was caught off guard. I hadn't expected a proposal then and there, in such a routine setting. No ring, no champagne, none of the typical fanfare. "Sorry," he smiled, seeing my surprise. I had planned a romantic dinner, a speech, a ring in a champagne glass. But now, looking at you, your face lit by the evening sun. I just couldn't hold it in. "So, will you?" I didn't hesitate for even a second. "Yes, Igor. I will marry you." He laughed, lifted me up in his arms, and spun me around, ignoring the surprised glances of passers-by. And I laughed with him, feeling incredibly happy, incredibly alive. He did give me a ring the next day over dinner in a restaurant, with a proper speech and the champagne. But that spontaneous moment on the promenade stayed in my memory forever as the symbol of our relationship. Natural, sincere, without pretense or falseness. We decided to have the wedding next spring, when the magnolias bloom in Sochi. A small, cozy ceremony with only the closest people. My parents, my brother, a few friends from both sides. No pomp, no unnecessary guests. Only those who truly mattered to us. Sometimes, looking at the ring on my finger, I would think about how strange everything had turned out. How one decision, one action can change your whole life. What if I hadn't agreed to that business trip? What if Andre and his mother hadn't left me at the airport? What if I had returned to Moscow after 3 months in Sochi? But then I'd realize those what-ifs don't matter. Life unfolded the way it did. And I was grateful for everything. For the pain that made me stronger, the disappointment that taught me to value sincerity, the betrayal that showed me the true worth of loyalty. But most of all, I was grateful to myself, for my determination, for my courage, for my ability to start over. And of course, for that calm phone call I made on the plane, when I decided I'd had enough. One day, not long before our wedding, Igor asked me, "Natasha, what was that call you sometimes mention, the one at the airport that changed everything?" I smiled, remembering that day, those feelings, that decision that turned my life upside down. And I told him the whole story. about how my husband and mother-in-law left me at the airport, not knowing that I had paid for our entire seaside trip myself, and how I calmly made one phone call that changed everything. A call to a friend who reminded me that I deserved better, that I wasn't an object to be used and discarded, that I was a person with dreams, goals, and desires. Such a simple idea it would seem. But sometimes the simplest truths are the hardest to accept. And sometimes all it takes is one conversation, one moment of clarity to change your whole life. "Now I understand," Igor said when I finished. "That call wasn't just a phone call. It was the moment you decided to respect yourself, to value yourself, to love yourself. And that decision brought you to me." "Yes," I nodded, hugging him. "Sometimes you have to lose everything to find something real." I didn't know what the future held for us. If we'd have children, what our married life would look like, what trials or joys awaited us. But I knew one thing. No matter what happened, I would never again allow anyone to suppress my identity, manipulate me, or make me feel like I was less than I am. And that knowledge made me strong and confident. Ready for any twist of fate, life went on. And it was beautiful in its unpredictability, in its opportunities, in its lessons and gifts. And it had all started on that very day at the airport, when my mother-in-law and husband left me alone, not knowing that I was the one who had paid in full for our seaside trip. That day, I calmly made one phone call, and that call changed everything. Looking back now, I understand that it wasn't just a call. It was a decision to respect myself, to value my life, to not let others define my worth. And for that decision, I will be grateful to myself for the rest of my life. Our wedding with Igor took place in May, just as we had planned. The day was sunny and warm, magnolias were blooming, filling the air with a delicate fragrance. I wore a simple white dress, no lace or frills, light and elegant. Igor was in a light-colored suit, so handsome and happy that it took my breath away just looking at him. The ceremony was held in a small gazebo by the sea. My parents, my brother and his wife, a few close friends including Irina, who flew in from Moscow just for the occasion, Igor's parents, his sister with her husband and children, several colleagues we truly befriended, not just worked with. No random guests, no one there out of obligation or duty. My mom cried as she walked me down the aisle. "You're so beautiful, my darling," she whispered, "and so happy. I always knew you deserved better." My dad hugged me tightly before placing my hand in Igor's. "Take care of her," he said to his future son-in-law. "She's one of a kind." "I promise," Igor replied, and I saw in his eyes that he truly meant it. The wedding banquet was held at a seaside restaurant. No formalities, no strict protocols. Just a joyful celebration with people who were genuinely happy for us and wanted to share in our joy. Irina, who was my maid of honor, gave a toast that all the guests remembered. "To Natasha," she raised her glass. "To my best friend, who taught me that it's never too late to start life over. That sometimes you have to lose everything to find yourself. That the greatest wealth is the ability to respect yourself and never let others define your worth. To you, my friend. And to Igor, who was smart enough to see the strong, incredible woman behind the modest accountant." I smiled through tears, hugging my friend. She had played such an important role in my new life, stood by me through the hardest moments, supported me when I doubted my decisions. "Thank you," I whispered, "for everything, for your friendship, your support, your faith in me." "Oh, come on," she waved it off playfully, but I saw she was touched. "You would have managed without me. You're stronger than you think." Maybe she was right. Maybe I would have found the strength to change everything even without her support. But I was grateful I never had to find out. That in the moment when I stood at a crossroads, lost and scared, there was someone who reminded me of my worth, of my right to be happy. After the wedding, Igor and I went on a 2-week trip across Europe: Rome, Venice, Paris, Barcelona. Cities I had always dreamed of but never truly hoped to see. With Andrei, we could barely afford a vacation at a Russian resort, let alone trips abroad. But now I stood in St. Mark's Square in Venice, gazed at the Colosseum in Rome, climbed the Eiffel Tower in Paris, and beside me was someone who shared in my wonder, my discoveries, my joy. When we returned to Sochi, we settled into everyday married life: work, chores, evenings together, weekends at the beach or in the mountains. Simple, ordinary joys that filled our life with meaning and happiness. 6 months after the wedding, I found out I was pregnant. It was unexpected. We had planned to wait a year or two before having children, but the news brought nothing but joy. Igor was over the moon. He practically carried me in his arms, indulging every whim, even the strangest ones caused by morning sickness. "I love you so much," he'd say, placing his hand on my growing belly. "Both of you." The pregnancy went smoothly, with no complications. I worked until the 7th month, then went on maternity leave. My parents arrived a month before the expected due date to help with the final preparations and be there for the first weeks after the baby arrived. Masha was born on a sunny April day. A healthy, strong little girl with sea-colored eyes just like her father's. She was so tiny but already such a person, with her own personality, her own wants, her own moods. I looked at her and couldn't believe that this little girl was my daughter. Our daughter, the fruit of our love. Igor was there during the birth, holding my hand, supporting me, whispering words of love and encouragement. And when it was over and they showed us our daughter, I saw tears in his eyes. Tears of happiness, pride, love. "Thank you," he said, kissing me, "for the most incredible gift of my life." The first months with a newborn were hard, as they are for all new parents. Sleepless nights, anxieties, doubts in our abilities. But we managed together, supporting each other, finding in those struggles new depths to our love. I often wondered how my life would have turned out if I had stayed with Andrei. Would we have had children, or would his mother have found a way to prevent that too? Would I have been happy, or would I still be surviving in the shadow of two people who saw no value in my individuality or desires? I didn't have answers to those questions. And I didn't want them. Life turned out the way it did, and I was grateful to fate for the turn it took. When Masha turned 6 months old, Irina called me. "Natashka." "Hold on tight," Irina began without preamble. "I have news that will surprise you." "What happened?" I asked, concerned. From her tone, I couldn't tell if it was good news or bad. "Your ex-husband divorced his new wife. Can you believe it? They were together for less than a year." I was surprised but not shocked. Something had told me the story would repeat itself, that Elena Mikhailovna would once again do everything to destroy her son's relationship with any woman who tried to take a place in his life. "What happened?" I asked, more out of politeness than actual interest. "The same thing that happened with you," Irina snorted. "His mommy. First she moved in with them, supposedly just for a while. Then she started bossing around, criticizing, interfering. In the end, the girl couldn't take it anymore and left. And your ex? He's out of work again. Quit that construction company a couple of months after the wedding. Mommy decided the job was too stressful for her little boy." I couldn't help but feel sorry for the unknown woman who had gone through the same ordeal as I had. But at the same time, a strange sense of satisfaction came over me. Not schadenfreude, no. Just the realization that the problem had never been me. That I wasn't a bad wife or not caring or understanding enough. The problem was Andrei. His inability to be independent. His pathological dependence on his mother. "And one more thing," Irina continued. "Your ex has been asking about you. Wondering how you are, where you are, what you're doing." And what did you tell him? Tensed. That you're married, living happily in Sochi. I didn't mention the child. Figured it wasn't his business. Thank you, I said sincerely. I was grateful to my friend for her tact. How did he react? He said he was happy for you. Irina snorted again. But I could see he was upset. Probably hoped you were still pining for him. Smiled. Yes, that would be so like Andrei. To always think of himself as the center of the universe, convinced that others couldn't possibly be happy without him. Well, it doesn't matter anymore, I said. That's a past life. Now I have a present and a future, and they're beautiful. You've changed so much, Natashka, Irina said with admiration in her voice. You're so confident now, so calm. I've never seen you like this before. Life changes us, I said, looking at my daughter sleeping in her crib. Sometimes for the better. After that conversation, I almost never thought of the past. It remained far behind me, like a page from a book I had no desire to reread. Time passed. Masha grew into a healthy, smart, curious little girl. Igor and I worked, built our careers, traveled, and enjoyed life. When our daughter turned 3, she got a little brother, Misha. 2 years later, a little sister, Anya. 3 children, more than I ever dreamed of. Life wasn't always easy. There were challenges, disagreements, moments of exhaustion and irritation, but we made it through together like a real family. Igor never made me feel like I had to handle everything alone, that the house and kids were solely my responsibility. He was always there, helping, supporting, more than just a husband, a true partner, a friend, an ally. When our youngest, Anya, turned 5, we made a big decision. We bought a small hotel by the sea. 3 floors, 15 rooms, a restaurant, a private beach. Cozy and intimate. Not for mass tourism but for those seeking a peaceful, comfortable vacation. It was a risk. We had to take out a loan, invest all our savings, give up stable jobs at the company. But we believed in our success, in each other, in our strength. And we weren't wrong. The hotel quickly gained popularity. We got regular clients who came back year after year and recommended us to their friends and acquaintances. We worked hard, but it was the kind of work that brought not just money but fulfillment, joy, and pride. The kids grew older and helped us however they could. And opportunities. Masha, the eldest, was already dreaming of studying hotel management after school and continuing the family business. Misha was more interested in computers. He created a website for the hotel and booking systems. Anya, the youngest, simply brought joy to everyone with her presence, her energy, her laughter. Igor's parents often came to visit us, helping with the children and the hotel. Mine did too, although less often. My mother was ill, and it was hard for her to endure a long journey. But they were always in touch with us, always interested in our lives, happy for our successes, supporting us in difficult moments. We were happy. Not with the perfect, cloudless happiness shown in romantic movies, but with a real, earthly kind. Sometimes hard but no less valuable because of it. When Masha turned 15, something happened that I could never have expected. Andrei came to our hotel. I didn't recognize him right away. He had changed a lot, aged, gone bald, gained weight. In his early 40s, he looked at least 55. Only when he said his name during check-in did I flinch, raise my eyes from the computer, and meet his gaze. Natasha. He was no less stunned. You. Is that really you? Hello, Andrei. I tried to speak calmly, although everything inside me tightened from the shock. Welcome to our hotel. Your hotel. He looked around as if trying to grasp the reality of what was happening. You own this place. My husband and I nodded toward Igor, who at that moment was talking to one of the guests at the other end of the lobby. I see. Andrei pressed his lips together. I didn't know. If you're uncomfortable, I can find another place. Pause. Was I really uncomfortable with his presence? Did I feel any negative emotions seeing this man with whom I once shared my life? And to my surprise, I realized, no. I didn't feel anything. No anger, no resentment, no disappointment. Only mild curiosity and maybe a bit of pity. He looked so lost, so unsure of himself. Nothing like the Andre I once loved. It's okay, I smiled. We welcome all guests. How long do you plan to stay? For a week. He still looked confused. I'm on vacation. Decided to go to the seaside. Alone. The question slipped out by itself. Alone? Yes, he nodded. Alone for a long time now. I checked him in, handed over the room key, explained where the restaurant, the beach, and other hotel amenities were. Everything was formal, professional, without unnecessary emotion. That evening, I told Igor about the unexpected guest. He reacted calmly, without jealousy or irritation. That's your past, Natasha, he said. It has no power over your present or future. If you're not uncomfortable with his presence, then I certainly am not. I hugged my husband, once again amazed by his wisdom, his confidence, in himself, in us, in our love. The next few days, I barely crossed paths with Andre. He had breakfast in the restaurant, then went to the beach or on excursions, returning late in the evening. I was busy with the hotel, the kids, and household chores. On the fourth day of his stay with us, we had a conversation. I was sitting on the restaurant terrace, going through bills, when he approached my table. May I sit? He asked hesitantly. If you don't mind talking. I nodded, pointing to the chair opposite. Course, have a seat. He sat down, nervously tapping his fingers on the table. You look great, Natasha. Time has been kind to you. Thank you, I smiled. A good life and a happy marriage are the best beauticians. Yes, I can see that everything is going well for you. He looked around. The hotel, the family, the kids. That girl who sometimes helps at the front desk. Is she your daughter? Yes, the oldest, Masha. We also have 2 more. Misha and Anya. 3 kids. He shook his head. I always knew you'd be a great mother. And how are you, Andre? I decided to steer the conversation toward him. Not because I was particularly interested, but simply out of politeness. Not great, he shrugged. After our divorce, I tried to start a family again. It didn't work out. Now I live alone. My mom died 3 years ago. I'm sorry. I truly sympathized with his loss, despite all the difficulties Yelena Mikhailovna had caused in my life. Thank you, he nodded. It was hard. She was ill for a long time. Took care of her. After she passed, I felt lost. I didn't know how to go on. She had guided me all my life, advised me, made decisions for me. And now, I was genuinely curious. Had his mother's death finally made him independent? It's hard, he sighed. I work at a small company as a sales manager. Nothing special, but it pays the bills. I live in the same apartment where we used to live. I sometimes date, but nothing serious. After 40, it's not so easy to find your soulmate. I didn't remind him that he had found his soulmate long ago. At 30, but failed to keep her, allowed his mother to destroy our marriage. What was the point of reopening old wounds? He already looked miserable enough. You know, he suddenly looked me straight in the eyes. I often think about you. About us. About how things might have turned out if I hadn't listened to my mother. If I'd gone with you to Sochi. No use thinking about what didn't happen. I shook my head. Life turned out the way it did. Each of us has our own path. Yes. But I was wrong, Natasha. I should have put you first. I should have protected our marriage from my mother's interference. I realized it too late. We all make mistakes, Andre. I tried to speak gently, not wanting to cause him more pain. And we all learn from them. The main thing is to take the lesson and move on. You did, he nodded. But I'm stuck. Still living in the past. Still regretting what I lost. I felt genuinely sorry for him. This man who was once so energetic, confident, ambitious, had become a sad shadow of his former self. He hadn't just lost me. He had lost himself, his dreams, his goals. It's not too late to change everything, I said. To start a new life, find new interests, new goals. Maybe. He didn't look convinced. Although at my age it's not that easy. Age is just a number, Andre. I know people who started over at 50, at 60, and succeeded, found happiness. He smiled faintly. You were always the optimist. Even when things were bad, you believed in the best. And you were right. Smiled back. Life has gotten better. Even better than I could have dreamed. We talked for about an hour more, about the past, the present, life in general. It was a calm, mature conversation between two people who had once been close, and now were strangers, but without bitterness, without blame. When he left, he paused and said, "Thank you, Natasha, for the conversation, for understanding, and forgive me for everything." "I forgave you a long time ago," I replied honestly. "I forgave myself and you and your mother. Resentment poisons life, and I didn't want to live with that poison inside me." He nodded, as if understanding what I meant, and left. We didn't speak again. 3 days later, he checked out of the hotel, said goodbye warmly, and left. I didn't expect I'd ever see him again. And I was right. A few years later, Irina told me that Andre had died of a heart attack. He was only 46. "You know," my friend said, "they say he never found himself after his mother died. He drank, quit his job, lived in the past." I was saddened by the news. Not because I still had any feelings for my ex-husband, but simply because it was a premature death of a man who never realized his potential, who never managed to step out of the shadow of his domineering mother, even after her death. I didn't attend the funeral. I felt it would have been inappropriate. But I sent a bouquet with a short note. "Rest in peace, Andre." No sentimentality, no false regrets. Just a gesture of respect for a person who had once been part of my life. Meanwhile, our life with Igor went on as usual. The kids grew up, the hotel prospered, and we were happy together. Of course, there were difficulties, arguments, and disappointments, like in any family, like in any life. But we overcame them together, supporting each other, finding in every problem an opportunity for growth and development. Masha, just as she had planned, enrolled in university to study hotel management. Misha chose programming. He created a modern management system for our hotel, which he later even sold to several other hotels in the region. Anya, the youngest, became passionate about psychology. She wanted to help people find their own path, their own happiness. Our children grew up in an atmosphere of love and respect. They saw how Igor and I treated each other, how we solved problems, how we supported each other during difficult moments. I hope they absorbed those lessons and carried them into their own relationships, into their own families. Looking back at that day in the airport, when my husband and mother-in-law left me alone, not knowing that I had fully paid for our trip to the seaside, I feel a strange sense of gratitude. Gratitude to fate, which gave me that lesson, that opportunity to rethink my life and my priorities. Sitting on the plane that day, I made one call. A simple, ordinary call to a friend. But that call changed everything. Because at that moment, I made a decision to never again let others define my worth, my desires, or my path. I decided to respect myself, to love myself, to be true to myself. And that decision led me to true happiness, to a husband who sees me as an equal partner, not an accessory to his life, to children who grow up in an atmosphere of love and respect, to work that brings not just money but fulfillment, to a life full of meaning, joy, and love. Sometimes I think about what would have happened if Andrei and Yelena Mikhailovna hadn't left me at the airport that day. If they had gone with me to Sochi, as they had promised. Maybe I would still be living in that toxic atmosphere, suffocating from disrespect, manipulation, and the constant feeling of being unwanted. Maybe I would have never found the strength to change everything. Would never have found the happiness I have now. Paradoxically, their betrayal became my salvation. That very moment of pain and humiliation became the starting point for a new, happy life. Now, at 50, with the kids grown, with Igor and I able to look back and appreciate the road we've traveled, I can say with certainty, I don't regret anything. Not those 5 years with Andrei, which taught me so much. Not that day at the airport, which became a turning point in my destiny. Not the decisions I made afterward, following the voice of my heart instead of the expectations of others. Life goes on. There are still many roads ahead, many challenges, many joys. But I know I'll handle whatever turns life throws at me. Because now I have the most important thing, belief in myself, in my strength, in my right to be happy. And that is the lesson I would like to pass on to anyone who ever finds themselves in a similar situation. It's never too late to start over. It's never too late to choose yourself, your happiness, or life. It's never too late to make that one call that changes everything. On that day, when my mother-in-law and husband left me alone at the airport, not knowing that I had fully paid for our trip to the sea, I calmly made one call. Called myself, my true self, the one who had been buried under years of manipulation and disrespect. And she answered with strength, determination, and belief in the future. And for that, I will be grateful to myself for the rest of my life.